Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for watching. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made this LOL surprise themed cake, so let's get right into it. I'm not going to show you how I iced and covered the cakes in fondant in this video just because the topper is quite lengthy, but I will link a couple videos below that show you how I do that more in depth. For the decorations, I kept it pretty simple for this cake. I rolled out some white fondant and then with my little heart cutter, I just stamped out a bunch of those and then spaced them out on my top tier. I just eyeballed this. You can use tools that will show you the exact distance between each one. I am more of a wing it type of person, but if you want it to be super perfect, you could totally go that route. For the bottom tier, I rolled out more of that blue fondant and then cut out 2 really long strips of that. And I also cut out a bunch of white circles, and you can see here, I'm kind of just folding them together, and this is going to create like a ruffled look. I placed 2 strips down in this triangle shape and then just left that gap at the top. I'm going to cover that in a bit, you'll see. And then with my fondant tool, I just marked in lines on either side and then added my ruffles starting from the bottom. I just used a little bit of shortening to hold them in place, and I just filled in that whole triangular shape with my ruffles. To fill that space at the top, I created a bow, so I rolled out more of my blue fondant into a long rectangle shape and then gathered it in the center and on both ends, and then pulled the ends into the middle and just kind of pressed them together. They should stick. And then added a little piece of fondant in the middle and just trimmed it at the back. Mine stuck with water. If you find that it's slipping, you can just put in a couple pieces of spaghetti to hold it in place. I didn't have an edible image printer for the logo, so I just kind of recreated it a little bit. It doesn't look exactly like the logo. It has surprise underneath it, but this was totally fine for me, so I just made a template for myself. I will link the actual logo below, so if you want to create the full deal, you can do that. And I basically just trimmed everything down and then used my edible marker to create the little polka dots on there. And then I stuck that onto the front of my blue tier just with a little bit of water. I made 2 dolls for my cake. I'm just gonna walk you through how I made one of them. I don't know the name of this one for some reason. I couldn't find it. So if you do know the name, then you can just comment that down below. This should be a good template to show you how to make any of the designs. There are a ton of different dolls out there, but I like this one the most. It kind of reminded me of like Alice in Wonderland a bit. I'm starting out with a flesh tone ball and then rolling that into an oval shape. And using my balling tool, I'm marking in 2 eyes. And then with my fondant tool, I'm just adding a little circle for the mouth. For her dress, I'm rolling out a ball of blue fondant into the spat teardrop shape, and I'm just going to press that against my work surface so it kind of blunts the bottom, and I'm also going to use my fingers to blunt the top of it. I'm marking in a line at the bottom of her dress using my fondant tool and then smoothing that down with my finger. For her legs, I'm rolling out some white fondant and then using my pinkies, I'm rolling it out so it kind of indents in 2 spots. And then I'm just going to trim that down to size, and I need 2 of these because they are her legs. I'm going to link the reference photo that I used below, and I basically just looked at that trying to get a good idea of proportions. I placed the legs below the dress. I have not attached them. I'm just keeping them here for now just as a reference. I added 2 balls of blue to either side of the top of the dress, and these are going to be like her puffy sleeves. And then using my fondant tool, I just marked in a line at the base of each of those just to make them look a little more ruffly. I added a little nub of that flesh tone fondant to the top for her neck and then put the head there. Again, I have not attached it. I'm just laying it down so that I have a good idea of where everything's gonna sit. And I'm adding a little ball of white fondant into each of the eye sockets. I added a circle of blue on top of the white and then another circle of black and rolling out a little snaky of black for each eye. That's going to be her eyelash. I just laid that down with a little bit of water and then curved the edges up. Using some black food coloring and a really crappy paintbrush, I recommend using a finer detailed brush than the one that I have. I marked on some eyelashes, and then with two little teeny tiny snakies of pink fondant, I just created the lips around the mouth. I added two little white balls of fondant for the catch lights, and then two little pieces of brown fondant for her eyebrows. For her hair, I added a little bit of yellow to some white fondant, and then just recreated it by rolling out these little snakies and laying them down, just framing her face first. I went over that with my fondant tool to give it some more texture, and then just rolled out a piece of that same colored fondant and put it on the back of her head, and just used my fondant tool to blend it into the top. The seam where they meet is going to be covered, so I wasn't worried about it. Going back to the legs, I'm putting a wooden skewer through both of them, making sure there is enough skewer poking through the top that it's going to go through her dress, and enough skewer at the bottom that it's going to go into the cake. Using a little bit of water, I am marking out some lines that go all the way around her legs, and then with some really thin strips of black fondant, I'm just wrapping those around to create the striped look. Very gently, I added those into the dress, just being careful that the skewer is not going to come out the top and that there's a little bit of a gap between the legs. To create the white ruffle for the bottom of her dress, I have this strip of white fondant, and I'm laying that on top of my foam pad, which is shamefully stained. It's not dirty. And then I have a balling tool, and I'm just going over the edge of that to thin it out and make it look more ruffly. I added that to the bottom of my dress using a little bit of water, and then I added another really thin strip of black fondant right underneath where her sleeves are, and that went all the way around. With two little triangle shapes, I created the bow. I just marked in two little dents on either of those with my fondant tool, and then a ball in the center. To create the arms, very similar to the legs, I rolled out a long snaky of the flesh tone, and then with my pinkies, I just made those two indents. And for the hand part, you can see I flattened that against my work surface, and then cut out the fingers using my X-Acto knife. To add the head to the body, I just put a skewer in the top and then very carefully inserted it through, making sure it didn't poke out the bottom. I've got her standing up into a piece of foam core, and I'm going to finish off the hair. So I just have these two balls of that hair colored fondant I made, and I'm marking some lines into that and then putting them on either side of her head. I used a long, thin strip of that black fondant to cover that joint where the hair met, and then created two really, really big triangles for the bow, and again, just another little dot in the center. Mine stuck in place, but if you find that the bow is a little bit wobbly, you can insert some spaghetti into them and place them on that way. I used spaghetti to attach the arms, and then once they were on there, I kind of used that opportunity to try to model them a little more like the picture. They're not perfect, but they were close enough. For her feet, I have these little bean shapes with black, and then I just put them through the skewer, and then another little stripe of white fondant that I textured with my fondant tool to make it look like ruffly socks. For the suits on the bottom of her dress, I just painted them on with food coloring, but if you want to make little itty bitty fondant ones, you could do that as well. So now that she was all done, I could add her to the top of my cake. You can see the other doll I made as well. I really dug like the techno glasses she had going on, so I thought she was super cute. And this was the cake all finished. I added the logo to the front and you can see the bow on there as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you did and subscribe to my channel for new videos every week. If you have any suggestions of what you'd like me to make next, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.